You see me? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Tommy Green, former editor of the Mobile Beacon, Mobile, Alabama. The first session dealt with an article in 2017 in the Pew Research Center that showed black voters percentage decline from 2012 to 2016 by 7% in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And those are the states that Trump won to become president of the United States. Black must vote to ensure that another Trump don't get elected. I'd like to acknowledge Beverly Cooper and Sheila Dawdy because they talked about the importance of voting and redistricting. Turn it over. Okay. Today we will still have a second session providing helpful information to the black community about the criminal justice system. Next presenter is Judge Herman Thomas.
Just go ahead and start.
Yeah.
Greetings. My name is Herman Thomas, and I had the pleasure and honor to serve as a state district and circuit court judge in Mobile County for approximately 18 years. Initially, I thought I would just talk about police stops or contact with the police, so people may have maybe a working knowledge of what they should and shouldn't do, and then talk about some common concerns that I observed while I was on the bench. First of all, I think it's extremely important for young people, especially young black males, first of all, to just use common sense. A lot of times when you may have an interaction with the police, it may not be as bad as you think. I think most police officers are basically good people and good individuals who are just hardworking citizens and trying to do their job. But there are some who abuse their discretion and abuse their authority, and I think we always must be mindful of that. But it's important to realize just because an officer approaches you and may make a request, that officer may or may not be doing it properly. What's important is to realize that for an officer to stop you or to question you, there's got to be some type of reasonable suspicion or probable cause for him to do so. Officers cannot just randomly stop people and question them at their leisure. That's just not proper in any jurisdiction. But if you're in a traffic situation and police officers pull you over, they should explain to you the circumstances surrounding why they pulled you over. But it's important to realize something that my father and my grandmother used to always tell me, pick your battles. A lot of times you may be able to get through a situation without any difficulty or discomfort. A lot of times it don't have to be confrontational, even if the police officer is confrontational. A lot of times it could be resolved rather easily. But at the same time, you always must be on your guard and you always must make sure that you are looking out for yourself. Technology is wonderful. Now you can always have the advantage of having some type of recording or technological advice. People have in their vehicles cameras where they can monitor what they're seeing. So in case there's an accident or some type of civil dispute, they can use their own camera to say what actually transpired prior to, say, a traffic accident or a citation in reference to a red light. And people have cell phones now that can record either by way of video and or audio. So I think it is a good practice if you have the technology to always avail yourself to using that technology. And that way you have a record. It's not what you say or what he said, it's what the fact speaks for themselves. So if you have that capacity, always do that. One of the things that I wanted to mention is passengers. A lot of times our young people are just passenger in a vehicle. So when they get stopped, sometimes the officer wants to extend their stop to all the passengers in the vehicle. Again, going back to just common sense, and you need to know who you're riding with. Just use common sense. Now, if the person is stopped for some type of traffic violation, you're not operating the vehicle, so there shouldn't be any need for you to have any contact with the police officer. But I've seen situations where not only the police officers initiate contact with passengers, but the passengers want to initiate the contact and get involved with the traffic stop. So you may be familiar with stay in your lane. If you're the passenger, act as a passenger. You didn't violate any traffic or moving violations, so you should not be involved. But you also could be an asset to your friend or family member, because while the officer's interacting with your friend or the driver, you can record what is transpiring. You don't have to say anything. You have access to a camera. You can record. So again, that's a record. And it's not your interpretation or your friend's interpretation or the officer's interpretation. The record speaks for himself. But again, I just think it's important just to use common sense. and a lot of times don't aggravate the situation. If the officer's done something wrong, you will have your opportunity for redress, even maybe at traffic court or during the criminal justice system, or by filing a complaint. One of the things I always used to tell people when I was on the bench, if you feel you was wrong, put it in writing. So many times people will not write the complaint. And if there's a record, if there's a pattern of a police officer acting a certain way, then the record would speak for itself. But if you don't write a formal complaint to the police department, to the DA's office, or to whoever may be the appropriate authority, then there's no record of what happened. And if this person is doing this on numerous occasions, and if everybody makes a record of what transpired, then you can see there's a pattern in practice. But we must report improper contact, or we feel we was treated unfairly. We must write it down and make a record of it and report it to the proper authorities. I think it's so important that we do that, and we just encourage our young people to just use common sense and to pick your battle. The officer may be totally wrong, but a lot of times the issue is not what the officer did, but how you reacted to the officer. And I'm not justifying any improper conduct, but just say for an example, if it was an improper stop, but then you become violent or belligerent with the officer, well, the issue is not the improper stop. The issue is the conduct that you displayed to the police officer. So a lot of times we can make the situation worse by trying to fight the battles in public on the streets rather than waiting to do it in the boardrooms, at the police headquarters, or even in the courtroom. So just be cautious of what you say or do, because a lot of times an old defense attorney told me it's a true saying. You know, if the fish had kept his mouth shut, he never would have got caught. And a lot of times we start talking and we're saying too much, and we give the officer the opportunity to develop probable cause or reasonable suspicion that maybe something was done. So just use common sense and just try not to escalate the situation, but by the same time, be mindful of your rights, know your rights, and just make sure you speak up for yourself in a respectful manner. And I think that's so important, because we do need to make sure that our young people understand that they have constitutional rights, and you don't give up your rights just because someone pulled you over. It may be valid, it may not be valid, but don't try to do all your fighting there on the streets. Let the facts speak for themselves. As another issue I wanted to address, and I've talked to Mr. Green about, you know, a lot of times defense attorneys, whether they're public defenders or private retained counsel, encourage young people to just plead guilty. This is your first offense. They're not going to do anything but probation. Well, that may be the case, but the point is, a lot of times as a young person, you may be involved in some other activity later on, and again, it may not be that you did anything wrong, but now you have a record, and you treat it differently in the system because you have that record. So it's extremely important when you go to court to have good representation, have proper representation, and understand the significance of pleading guilty, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, because sometimes that can enhance the punishment later on. So there's been so many occasions where young people go ahead and take the deal, so to speak, to go ahead and get it over with. Then maybe 3 to 5 years later, they may be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but they have a felony conviction, they have a misdemeanor conviction. So they're treated differently in the system. So understand that all actions have consequences. So be very careful what you do in a formal proceeding, because it could follow you later on in life. So many young people don't understand the benefits of youthful offender. If you're eligible for youthful offender, you need to make sure that you explore that option. There's just so many things that you need to know. And if you're not fluent in the criminal justice system, you need to talk to someone who is. Always talk to someone who's more knowledgeable. You need a lawyer. And don't listen to people who have been involved in the system, what they call jailhouse lawyers, because a lot of times it's the facts that makes the difference. You got people who you think may be similar situated who are treated differently, but the facts may be so different, or there may be minor differences in the facts that could have a significant difference why defendant A was treated one way and why the defendant B was treated the other way. So be careful as comparing yourself with other people and getting all upset. Make sure that you retain someone who understands and knows the system, because it's also important that they know the local system. You may be traveling through a jurisdiction and they may do things differently in this jurisdiction than they do in your hometown jurisdiction, especially if you're in college and you're in a college town. Just because they do things a certain way in your hometown, they may not do it where you attend college. So you got to understand, even maybe in the same state, they have different common practices in some jurisdictions versus others. But it's just, the bottom line is, use common sense, think before you act or react or say anything, and after the situation is over with, make sure you write it down and document, and you talk to someone that you admire and respect, and then hopefully they can assist you with maybe getting proper legal representation if it's something that could potentially be harmful to you or your family in the future.
That's good.
Is that kind of what you're looking
Yeah.
for? Okay.